Chapter 42 of Puss in Boots, Jr. and Tom Thumb. The Blackbird. He was a good climber, and went up the tree at a good pace. The blackbird's nest was almost at the top, but Puss was not discouraged. "Draw your sword and fight for your life!" he called out to little Tom Thumb. This was exactly what Tom was doing. But, oh dear me, the bird's feathers were so thick and Tom's weapon so small that at first the blackbird hardly noticed it at all. By and by, however, Tom's thrusts began to tell, and by the time he was dropped into the nest, the blackbird had been stabbed several times. The nest was empty, and as soon as Tom stood upon his feet, he swung his sword in the air and cried out, "Away with you, villain of a blackbird!" The blackbird perched himself on the edge of the nest and regarded Tom most curiously. "I do not mean to harm you," he said. "I am so lonely up here in my empty house that I want someone to talk to. That is the reason I carried you off. I am no robber. Neither am I a villain." Just then Puss Jr. reached the nest, and the blackbird flew over to a limb at a safer distance. "You did well to make your escape," cried Puss, "for I would have wrung your cowardly neck had I caught you." "Let me explain," replied the blackbird. Puss didn't wait to listen, but hastily picking up little Tom Thumb, hid him in his pocket. "Won't you let me explain?" cried the blackbird a second time. "Explain what?" asked Puss Jr. angrily. "I don't see that there is anything to explain. I'd like to cut off your head with my trusty sword." "You mistake my intentions," said the blackbird. "I was just telling Tom Thumb that the reason I carried him off was because I was lonely up here in my empty nest and wanted a comrade." "Yes, that was what he was saying," called Tom Thumb from inside of Puss Jr.'s pocket. "But all the same, I'm glad to be in your pocket, dear Puss. Our black friend here would have probably fed me on worms had you not rescued me, and I'm not fond of that sort of food." "Wait and hear my story," cried the blackbird. "Not now," answered Puss, sliding carefully down to the ground so as not to spill Tom out of his pocket. End of chapter 42. Recording by Pigeau.